Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to engage in a bit of a mental exercise. I want you to imagine the horizon,
Yeah.
but not just the physical one, the line where the sea meets the sky. I'm talking about the strategic horizon of an entire industry.
And we're looking at the maritime world.
The maritime world, specifically the very, very high-end sector. But we're stripping away all the usual gloss. We are not going to talk about engine displacement or how many jet skis you can fit in a garage.
Or which celebrity was seen on deck in St. Tropez.
Exactly. None of that. Which is, let's be honest, usually the entirety of the conversation, isn't it?
It is. It's a game of statistics and, frankly, superficiality. How big, how fast, how much.
It's a checklist.
You know,
But the stack of documents we have in front of us today, the Constellation newsletters, the strategic dossiers from a group called Uran, they demand a completely different approach,
a different vocabulary, even.
a completely different vocabulary. We are looking at a paradigm shift. We're analyzing a new maritime typology. And to be frank, it's a shift that moves us from the world of, say, engineering into the world of philosophy.
And high-stakes strategy.
Yes. We are talking about the art superyacht.
And I think it's crucial we define what that means right at the top, because on the surface, it sounds like a marketing buzzword.
It does. Just add art to make it sound expensive.
Right. But in the context of these dossiers, it is a structural definition. It's a technical term. We're talking about a move from the vessel as a technical asset.
Yeah.
A machine that floats to the vessel as a cultural artifact.
And the mind behind this concept, an architect named Alexandros Mamoglu, he brings a very specific weight to this argument.
You have to understand his background to get the concept.
Exactly.
Ah.
This background is the lens we have to use today. Mamoglu isn't just a naval architect. He's an architect and, critically, a town planner. He comes from the Sorbonne with a background in aesthetics and art sciences. And then there's his track record managing these massive art integration projects. We're not talking about buying a few sculptures. We're talking about fleet-wide strategies involving tens of thousands of artworks.
And that town planner credential you mentioned, I think that's the key that unlocks this entire deep dive.
How so?
Well, when a town planner looks at a 100-meter super yacht, they don't see a boat. They don't see a vehicle.
They see a system.
They see a floating city-state. They see a node in a network. They see a complex social system that requires governance, not just decoration. It's a completely different scale of thinking.
Okay, so let's start with the diagnosis, because
Yeah.
you can't really propose a cure without first understanding the disease.
A very diplomatic way to put it.
The dossier identifies a phenomenon it calls the saturation of aesthetic vocabulary. Now, that is a very polite, very academic way of saying something quite harsh about the current state of luxury.
It is a very polite way of saying we have hit a wall of boredom, a creative dead end.
Explain that.
If you look at the trajectory of luxury over the last, say, 20 or 30 years, it has been defined by what we could call material-centric value, meaning you measure the worth of the vessel by the rarity of the materials used to build it. Is the marble from that one specific quarry in Carrara? Is the wood a rare, book-matched tropical hardwood? Is the leather stamped with a specific heritage brand?
It's luxury by the pound, or luxury by the price tag on the material.
Precisely. It is a checklist of consumption. I have the rarest of this, the finest of that. But the problem with material-centric luxury is that it has a ceiling.
There's only so much rare marble in the world.
Well, yes, but more than that, eventually, everyone who can afford a superyacht can afford the same rare marble and the same gold taps. The aesthetic, it becomes uniform. It becomes a standard.
And in the world of the ultra-high net worth individual, standard is the death of desire.
It's the ultimate failure. When every new boat looks like a variation of the same five-star hotel lobby, the vocabulary is saturated. It's exhausted. It communicates nothing unique about the owner other than the fact that they have money.
Which everyone in that harbor already knows.
Exactly. It's a redundant message.
So this is the thesis of our deep dive today. The shift away from that, from consumption, simply buying the best materials, to what the documents call cultural authorship.
A fundamental shift in thinking.
The vessel stops being an object you possess, and it becomes an environment you author.
Authored environment. This is the phrase to hold on to for this whole discussion. It implies intent. It implies there is a mind, a point of view behind the layout, not just a budget and a decorator.
And this brings us to the core concept of the year-end dossier, the foundation for this entire typology.
Cultural architecture.
This is part one of our analysis, cultural architecture. And I think for a lot of people, their brain immediately goes to interior design. They think, okay, we're just going to hire a better decorator. We're going to hang better, more expensive art on the walls. But the source material is adamant. It is absolutely insistent that cultural architecture is not decoration.
It's the antithesis of decoration.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is the fundamental opposite. Decoration is additive. It's an afterthought.
You build the steel box, you insulate it, you put up some walls.
And then you apply a surface layer to make it look nice. You buy a painting to match the cushions. That's decoration.
So what is cultural architecture?
It's structural. It's integrated. It means that the meaning, the form, and the experience converge from the very first line drawn on the paper. The art isn't an accessory you hang on the infrastructure. The art is the infrastructure.
Okay, that's a big idea. The dossier breaks this down into 4 layers to make it more digestible. I want to walk through these slowly because they really dismantle the traditional way of thinking about building a yacht.
You too.
The first is the conceptual layer.
This is the intellectual foundation, the big idea. The dossier argues that before you decide on the number of cabins or the top speed, you have to establish the worldview of the vessel.
Which is a question I suspect very few owners or even designers have ever been asked. What is your boat's worldview? It sounds almost absurd.
It sounds abstract, I know, but think of it in terms of, say, a museum or a great cultural institution. The Louvre has a worldview. The Guggenheim has a worldview. A great cathedral has a thesis.
A reason for being beyond just existing.
Exactly. Mimoglu is arguing, why shouldn't a 100-meter vessel, which costs as much as a museum to build, also have a thesis? The conceptual layer establishes the narrative framework. Is this vessel about the concept of preservation? Is it about futurism? Is it about the dialogue between Eastern and Western art?
So we start with a story.
You start with an idea. Once you have that core concept, every other decision, from the shape of the hull to the texture of the door handles, flows from it. It's the governing principle. It ensures the vessel isn't just a collection of expensive things, but a coherent, unified thought.
It moves it from being a house to being a home, or from a showroom to a gallery. It gives it a soul, for lack of a better word.
And narrative integrity.
Okay, so after the conceptual layer, the second is the spatial layer, or what they call spatial choreography.
And this is where the architect and town planner in Mimoglu really comes to the forefront. Architecture is never static. We think of it as static, but it dictates movement. And movement dictates emotion.
You mean how you move through a space?
Precisely. Spatial choreography is the intentional design of that movement. How do you move from the bright, exposed public space of an aft deck into the quiet, private sanctuaries of the library?
Well, in a standard yacht, you walk down a corridor, it's a hallway.
Exactly. It's a transit space.
Yeah.
It's functionally inert. But in cultural architecture, that transition is scripted. It's a deliberate experience.
What would that look like?
Maybe the ceiling height gradually lowers to create a sense of compression and intimacy before you enter the private space. Maybe the acoustic quality shifts from the brightness of the sea air to a cushioned, library-like silence.
So you're manipulating the senses.
You're directing the guest's emotional state through the manipulation of space. Maybe the sightlines are controlled, so as you walk down that corridor, you only see a very specific piece of art at a very specific moment, framed by a doorway. You're pacing their experience, like a film director.
Which leads perfectly into the third layer they describe, the sensory layer.
Right.
The dossier talks about light and sound, not just as utilities. Can I see where I'm going? Is the engine too loud? But as narrative instruments.
This is about the phenomenology of the space, the actual feeling of being in it. Think about the acoustics of luxury.
Okay.
Real luxury isn't just the absence of noise. It's not just quiet. It is a specific quality of silence. It's the satisfying sound of a heavy door closing with a solid thud. It's the way a conversation sounds different in a room lined with velvet versus a room lined with cold glass.
It's a curated soundscape.
It is. And light is the primary tool of the curator. In a museum, light tells you what to look at. In an authored environment like this, the light changes to modulate the mood. It marks the passage of time in an intentional way. You are just sitting in a room. You are inhabiting a sensory landscape that has been precisely calibrated.
It's all incredibly deliberate.
Every single element.
And finally, the fourth layer, the symbolic layer. This seems to be the one that faces outward to the world.
Yes, this is the external face, the vessel as a piece of communication. A superyacht is a massive object. It occupies a huge amount of physical and visual space in a harbor. It disrupts the view. It has a presence.
You can't ignore it.
You can't. So the symbolic layer is about managing that presence. What does the vessel communicate to the observer on the dock? Does it scream, "I have infinite resources"?
Which many of them do.
Or does it whisper, "I have infinite taste"? Does it project intellectual curiosity? Does it communicate a respect for heritage and culture? This is where the vessel becomes a medium. It projects the owner's cultural affiliations, their identity.
It's the difference between brute force and soft power.
A perfect way to put it. If you ignore the symbolic layer, you risk building something that is just big and loud. If you master it, you build a monument.
So when we stack these 4 layers together, conceptual, spatial, sensory, and symbolic, we get this new framework, cultural architecture.
Correct.
And the dossier draws a very sharp, clear line here between what it calls standard design and authorship.
It's a vital distinction to make. Standard design, especially in this market, is usually driven by the market itself. It relies on neutral palettes, safe choices, generic luxury cues.
Beige, lots of beige.
So much beige. It's designed to be inoffensive, often with one eye on the resale value. Will the next owner like this?
Authorship, on the other hand.
Authorship is risky. It's specific. It is intensely personal and intentional. It creates what the documents call a cultural text that can be read and interpreted. When you step onto an art superyacht, you aren't stepping into a generic hospitality space. You are stepping into a story, into a point of view.
And this connects to a major trend that's identified in one of the newsletters, Constellation number 55, the convergence of industries.
Yes, the macro context.
We're seeing this blurring of the lines between hospitality, real estate, and yachting. It seems like the traditional silos are breaking down.
They are, and that is the macro context you absolutely cannot ignore when analyzing this. Look at the major luxury groups, the big names. You have hotel brands that are reviving historic rail lines and launching fleets of sailing ships.
Right.
You have major hospitality groups commissioning entire fleets of yachts. You have real estate developers partnering with hotel brands to build branded residences, and now those same partnerships are extending out onto the water.
The hotel brands are going to see.
The hotel brands are going to see, and the real estate developers are coming with them. And what this tells us is that the client, the UH&W individual, has changed their baseline expectation.
Yep.
The client who owns a penthouse in a branded, curated residence in New York and stays at the finest, most experiential resorts in Kyoto, they expect that same level of what the dossier calls an experiential landscape on their boat.
They don't want to step down in quality or experience.
They don't want a maritime product that feels like a compromise. They want the service of a grand hotel, the curatorial rigor of a museum, and the absolute privacy of a yacht, all in one integrated package.
And the art superyacht, then, is the pinnacle of this convergence.
Yeah.
It is the physical manifestation of that new demand.
It is the ultimate expression of it.
So let's go inside. Let's step on board. Part 2 of our discussion involves looking at the vessel itself. What does this museum at sea actually look like and feel like?
This brings us to Constellation Newsletter number 34 and the concept of the art gallery at sea. Now, again, this is not just about screwing a painting to a bulkhead so it doesn't fall off in high waves.
No.
The concept here is a dedicated, purpose-built space that functions as a convergence of a private gallery, a public museum, and a commercial showroom. But it has to navigate a very specific and difficult tension.
Which is?
Privacy versus public.
Right, because the entire defining characteristic of a private yacht is usually exclusion. It is a fortress of privacy. It's a bubble.
A very expensive bubble.
So if you have this incredible collection of masterpieces on board, but nobody ever sees them except you and a few guests, have you actually achieved anything culturally?
That is the paradox.
Yeah.
And the art superyacht concept solves this by having the gallery flip its function based on its location.
Explain that.
When the vessel is at sea, underway, the gallery is a sanctuary. It is for the private contemplation of the owner and their guests. It's an intensely intimate experience with the art.
The bubble is intact.
The bubble is intact.
Right.
But when the vessel is in port, moored in Monaco or Miami or Athens, it transforms, becomes a platform for cultural exchange. It can host targeted exhibitions. It can open its doors by invitation to local dignitaries, to artists, to museum curators, to valued clients. It becomes a bridge between the private world of the boat and the public cultural life of the land.
I found the analysis by the art historian persona in the documents. Maria, particularly insightful on this. She talks about the types of art and how they relate to the space. She makes a distinction between intimate works and monumental works.
Yes, and this goes right back to the spatial choreography we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
It's not just about what art you have, but where you put it and why.
So a monumental work.
In the atrium or the grand salons, in the double height spaces, you need monumental works. These are what she calls spatial anchors. They orient the viewer. They define the scale of the room. They send a clear signal. You have arrived in a significant place.
And the intimate works.
You place those in the cabins, in the corridors, in the study. These are drawings, sketches, smaller sculptures, things that invite you to lean in close to inspect the texture, the artist's hand.
It's using art to pace the human interaction with the space.
That's a perfect summary. The monumental work makes you step back in awe. The intimate work makes you step forward in curiosity. The architecture and the curation are working in concert to control the rhythm of the body and the eye.
And we have to talk about the sensory architecture in more detail here, especially with the art. The dossier gets very specific about light.
As it should. Light is the medium of time. It's the medium of perception. On a standard yacht, you flip the switch and the lights come on at 100%. It's functional.
But here,
Here, the lighting system is likely a complex, programmed integration of natural and artificial sources that modulates throughout the day. The cool, oblique morning light coming through a porthole reveals a completely different texture on a sculpture than the warm, focused artificial light in the evening.
so the art is never static. It's always changing with the time of day.
The experience of the art is never static. The sensory layer ensures that the collection is always alive, always revealing something new.
Which leads to a fascinating point about the static nature of most art versus the moving nature of the boat itself. The sources mention kinetic art and digital extensions.
This is where the concept gets very modern, very 21st century. The vessel is in constant, gentle motion. The sea is always moving. The horizon is shifting. Why should all the art on board be perfectly still?
So kinetic art.
Sculptures that physically move, that react to the balance and motion of the ship. They mirror the environment. They bring the outside world in. And then there's digital art, which allows for what they call exhibitions in motion.
What does that mean?
It means you can change the digital collection to match the destination. Imagine you have state-of-the-art digital screens and projection surfaces built into the architecture. If you are sailing from the Mediterranean to Japan, your digital collection can be updated remotely. It can display a curated collection of contemporary Japanese digital art as you approach. The vessel adapts its cultural skin to its location.
It creates a responsive and interface of identity.
That is the ultimate goal, what the dossier calls ultimate art and design customization. The yacht should not be a monument to the interior designer's brand or the shipyard's capabilities. It should be a projection of the owner's internal life, their intellect, their passions, their story. It's a mirror.
And he is where that town planner perspective becomes absolutely essential. A boat has to dock somewhere.
It does.
You can build the most perfect, offered cultural artifact, a floating masterpiece. But if you park it in a soulless concrete box with a gas pump and a chain restaurant, you've completely broken the narrative.
You've shattered the experience. The magic ends the second you step onto the dock.
This brings us to part 3, the infrastructure, the world around the yacht.
This is Constellation Newsletter number 36, and for me, this is the most ambitious and honestly the most brilliant part of the entire Uran proposal.
Which is?
A superyacht cannot exist in a vacuum. It is a node, and a node needs a network. So Mumblou introduces the Uran Art Marinas Network.
The phrase used in the documents is a conceptual symphony.
It's a beautiful term for a very practical strategy. Currently, marinas operate as singular, competitive entities. They are service stations. You go there to fuel up, restock the wine cellar, and maybe eat at a restaurant. They are functional, but rarely inspirational.
They're parking lots for boats.
Expensive parking lots. Mimiglu proposes coordinating multiple marinas across different locations simultaneously to create a coherent network.
So the marina transforms from just a parking lot into a cultural hub.
Precisely. And this requires a fundamental change in how marinas are designed, built, and managed. The dossier lists community engagement as a core requirement. Before you even design the marina, you have to conduct surveys and interviews with the local community.
Now that seems completely counterintuitive for the luxury industry, which usually prides itself on building walls, on exclusivity. Why do you care what the local fishermen or shopkeepers think?
Because the ivory tower model is obsolete and ultimately fragile. If a marina is a fortress that turns its back on the city it's attached to, it breeds resentment. It feels alien, like an occupying force. It has no roots.
It's just a parasite on the local view.
Yes. But by engaging the community, By understanding the local heritage, the vernacular architecture, the local aesthetic, you can integrate the marina into the cultural and physical fabric of the place. It becomes a point of pride for the town, not just a place of envy.
And practically, what does this look like? The dossier talks about real estate integration.
It does. It means the buildings that surround the marina berths shouldn't just be duty-free shops or generic real estate offices. They should be art and design centers.
Galleries, studios.
Artist studios, exhibition spaces, lecture halls, high-end artisan workshops. This creates what they call cultural spillover. The culture from the super yacht spills onto the dock into the marina buildings, and the culture of the local town spills into the marina. It becomes a porous, dynamic border where ideas and people are exchanged.
A meeting place.
A genuine cultural hub.
And this kind of shared infrastructure is what enables the concept you mentioned earlier, exhibitions in motion.
This is the logistical genius of the network. If you have a chain of these art marinas in the Côte d'Azur, the Greek Isles, the Emirates, that all adhere to the same high technical and aesthetic standards.
They all speak the same language.
They all speak the same language. Then the yachts themselves can function as mobile carriers of culture. An exhibition of, say, emerging kinetic sculptures can start in a gallery within the marina in Monaco.
Right.
Selected pieces can be securely loaded onto a participating art super yacht, which then travels to the art marina in Genoa, where the exhibition continues. Then it moves on to Athens. The collection circulates to the network.
The yacht becomes the shipping container, the gallery, and the courier all at the same time.
It completely redefines the idea of an itinerary. You aren't just navigating geographical coordinates anymore. You are navigating from singular ports to a conceptual symphony. The journey itself becomes a curated cultural program.
Okay, this is a massive holistic vision, which brings us to the so what portion of our discussion, part 4, the strategic implications.
The payoff.
We've built the boat, we've built the network of marinas. What does this actually do for the owner beyond having a beautiful place to be? We're talking about soft power.
We are. Constellation newsletter number 67 talks about business diplomacy at sea. Now, we all know that business has always been done on yachts. It's the classic cliche, deals are made over cocktails on the aft deck.
Sure.
But Mamaglu is looking to formalize this, to elevate it. He talks about moving beyond informal cultural corridors to creating strategic alliances.
And he specifically mentions big industry events like the Genoa Boat Show and the Monaco Yacht Show.
Yes. Usually these are sales events. You go there to look at hardware, to buy or sell a boat. But for the owner of an art superyacht docked in an art marina, these events become stages. They become opportunities for what he calls strategic immersion.
Explain that concept. How is strategic immersion different from just hosting a nice dinner party?
Think about the environment, the context. If you are negotiating a major merger or a sensitive diplomatic agreement or a critical partnership, the physical environment you're in matters immensely.
It sets the tone.
It sets the entire tone. If you host that meeting in a typical yacht interior that just screams money and excess gold everywhere, rare animal skins, you're projecting a certain image. It can be aggressive, it can be garish, it can implicitly signal, I have more power and resources than you.
Which can trigger defensiveness in the other party.
Exactly. It can start the negotiation from a place of imbalance. But if you host that same meeting in an environment of cultural architecture, a space that projects sophistication, intellect, a respect for history, and curatorial rigor, you are projecting something else entirely.
You're projecting soft power.
You're projecting soft power.
Yeah.
You are signaling that you are a steward of culture. You are a statesman, not just a tycoon. It changes the entire temperature of the negotiation. It elevates it.
The vessel becomes a diplomatic tool.
It absolutely does. It facilitates a different kind of dialogue, a cultural exchange that is elevated above the purely transactional.
And to tie this entire global ecosystem together, there's one more piece of infrastructure proposed in Constellation number 69, the Global Rolling Prize AD.
This is the governance mechanism. It's the structural framework to maintain standards and generate continuous excitement and innovation within the network.
So it's an awards program.
Not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Most industry awards are static. You have a gala dinner, you get a trophy, you go home, it's over. The Rolling Prize is designed as a continuous cultural infrastructure, a rolling constellation of recognition.
What does that mean, rolling?
It means it's not a once-a-year event. It's an ongoing process of identification and celebration of excellence. And crucially, it covers art, architecture, and design across multiple related industries.
So not just yachts.
No. Yachts, cruise, aviation, real estate. It acknowledges the convergence we spoke about at the beginning. It breaks the silos. It says that great design in a private jet is conceptually connected to great design in a super yacht or a luxury residence. It creates a shared standard of excellence.
And the dossier positions Monaco as the gateway for this.
It does. It establishes Monaco not just as a playground for the rich, but as the conceptual launchpad for this new system of global aesthetic governance.
Aesthetic governance. That is a phrase that carries a lot of weight. It sounds incredible, but we have to look at the reality of maintaining all of this.
Of course.
Part 5, the operational reality. Because you can have the highest, most beautiful aesthetic ideals, but if the air conditioning breaks or the art starts getting moldy from the sea air, the entire illusion collapses.
This is where the dream meets the salt water and the engine room. The operational ecosystem is absolutely critical. It is not enough to design and build the art superyacht. You must have a plan to maintain it.
And the dossier emphasizes something called curatorial maintenance.
Which is completely distinct from standard maritime maintenance.
How so?
You aren't just polishing the brass and servicing the engines. You are caring for a world-class collection in a hostile marine environment. You need museum-level climate and humidity control protocols. You need art handlers on the crew. You need rotation schedules for light-sensitive works. You need to write the context and story for new pieces that come on board. It is quite literally museum management at sea.
It's a huge commitment. And what about experiential governance?
This is about the human element, the crew, the captain, the service. If the owner, the author, is not on board, who ensures the soul of the vessel remains intact?
Right. If the crew changes, does the whole narrative get lost?
That's the risk. Experiential governance is the creation of a set of protocols, like a Bible for the ship, that ensures the narrative remains coherent over time, regardless of who is on board. It codifies the original thesis. It ensures that the way the wine is poured, the way the lights are dimmed in the evening, and the way a guest is introduced to a new piece of art remains consistent with the original vision.
It's about maintaining the software, not just the hardware.
A perfect analogy.
And Uran proposes a business model for this. This isn't just a dream. The documents mention bronze, silver, and gold consulting tiers.
Which is important because it validates the entire concept. It shows this isn't just an academic theory. It is a structured, deliverable service. It is a consulting framework that allows shipyards, brokers, and owners to engage with this complex methodology at different levels of intensity. It turns the philosophy into a tangible product.
Okay, so we've covered the theory, the vessel itself, the network, the overarching strategy, and the nitty-gritty of operations. It is a complete 30,000-foot ecosystem.
It is.
As we move toward the end of our deep dive, I want to try and synthesize this. What are we really, truly looking at here?
We're looking at the birth of a new maritime typology. It's a new category of vessel altogether.
And at its heart is the move from consumption to experience.
As the art historian Maria notes in the dossier, the vessel is not a possession. It is a journey. It's a platform for experience. But I think the most powerful, the most strategic argument Alexandra makes is about legacy.
Financial legacy. Or something else.
It starts as cultural legacy, which ultimately becomes financial legacy. Think about it this way. A standard yacht is a depreciating asset. It is machinery.
Right. It loses value the second it hits the water.
It rusts. Engines get old. The interior design styles change and look dated. A 20-year-old yacht is often just an old boat worth a fraction of its original cost.
But a cultural artifact.
A cultural artifact accumulates value, symbolic value, historical value, provenance. By embedding museum-quality art and a powerful narrative into the very structure of the vessel, you are insulating the asset against material obsolescence. You're building something that matters beyond its function.
It's an heirloom, not a disposable product. Which brings us to the final provocation for our listeners, whether they're the people running the shipyards, the architects drawing the lines, or the owners writing the checks. We live in a world where technical perfection is. It's just the baseline. It's the price of entry.
Technical perfection is assumed. Of course it will float. Of course it will be fast and safe. That's not the differentiator anymore.
So the question becomes, in a world saturated with material perfection, is meaning the ultimate luxury?
That is the $1 billion question, isn't it?
It is.
And I believe the answer is yes. In a world of information overload, in a world of material saturation where you can have anything you want, the rarest thing you can possibly possess is a clear, beautiful, coherent thought that you can live inside.
The floating masterpiece.
Exactly. And so the final challenge posed by these documents is this. Are you building objects for today, or are you building cultural infrastructures for the future?
That is the thought we will leave you with.
Until next time.